In this video, I'm going to show you the professional vocal chain that I use on almost all of my clients' tracks. I'll show you how to go from this raw recording,
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go, I've got an
to this final product.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go, I've got an aching that you're waiting for, the lights to turn low.
These past couple of years have been a crazy time for music producers. Pretty much every audio company and their cousins have released some form of an AI tool that's designed to help you mix even better. And some of them are really good for vocals. But that means as a professional producer, the vocal chain I've used for years has been forced to evolve along with it. Normally on this channel, I teach and I preach the good word of using stock plugins on your tracks. But this video is a little different. I do want to preface it by saying any of these expensive plugins that you see me using here aren't necessary for getting an amazing vocal sound. Stock plugins are enough. And if you're interested in some stock plugin vocal chains, I've got 10 of them that you can download for free in the description below. Go check them out. But this video isn't about free plugins. It's about the plugins that I really love using as a producer that save me time and that sound fantastic for my clients when I actually work on their tracks. And with that being said, let's hop in. Here's the main vocal lead that I'm working on with no processing at all.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go, I've got an aching that you're waiting for, the lights to turn low.
Notice that the vocal recording is already pretty close to the final product. If you've got all of that nailed down, it's time to hop into some processing. The way I start with my processing starts with the lead vocal first. I'll do all of my lead vocal processing and then I'll copy over the settings from my lead vocal onto my backing tracks. That's what we're gonna do for this project as well. The first plugin that I'll use on my lead vocals is Melodyne. Melodyne is my go-to pitch editing software. I find it a giant leap above Logic's Flex Pitch. I also find it a lot more intuitive to use than Autotune's Graph Mode. That's why I'm using it here. After I do have it in here, I'll go through and do two things. First, I'll make sure that the key is right. Then I'll click on this button here and I'll make sure that the pitch center is either at 100 or the pitch drift is around 70%. This should be a subtle change, especially if the performance was really close to the original pitch. Then I'll go through each individual vocal, make sure that it analyzed it correctly. After all that's said and done, I'll do two more things. First, I'll click on this compressor button and make the loud notes quieter by about 20% and make the quiet notes louder by about 20%. This will just help it hit my compressor more evenly by the time when it actually comes to processing. If I find I have an especially sibilant vocal as well, I'll right click here on my amplitude tool and I'll go into sibilant balance and I'll take down the percent of sibilance by 20, 30, 50% depending on how bad it is. This vocal was not very sibilant, so I left it alone. That brings me to plugin number 2, which is still dealing with pitch. The next plugin is Autotune Pro. Normally you would use the graph mode for this if you're going to be using it in professional circumstances. Because I already did Melodyne, I'm just using this for the sound characteristics that Autotune adds. And because I'm working in the genre of pop, I really want that really refined professional sound that Autotune gives. Now notice that my retune speed is still semi-low, my flex tune speed is really high, and so is my humanized speed. On my backing tracks, I might bump these down so that the effect is more prominent. However, for my main lead vocal, the idea is subtlety. You should be able to A/B this and not notice so much of a change. You're just going to notice a slight vibe difference. Check it out.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go, I've got an aching that you're waiting for, the lights to turn low.
It's just adding that extra subtlety, putting it even more on pitch, and making it more appropriate for the genre. It's not going to be doing that much at all because Melodyne has already taken care of a lot of the heavy lifting. After we tackle pitch, I want to continue tackling some volume things that are going on with my vocal. To tackle some of those volume problems, I'm going to be using the smartGate by Sonable, or Sonable, or Sonible, not sure, but I do know that they make some amazing plugins. What's cool about this is it's all powered by AI. You can tell Sonable, hey, this is what my signal sounds like, and it will automatically set a threshold based on what it thinks is appropriate. That is a really cool feature, and it saves you a ton of time. Normally for professional vocals, I'd go through all of these silences and cut them out like so. I get rid of any breaths by cutting them out like so, but with this smartGate, I don't have to do that anymore. It's automatically going to recognize that we have enough signal here and introduce it with the gate. Check it out, you'll see it. It's a pretty cool visual representation.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go, I've got an aching that you're waiting for, the lights to turn low.
You can adjust this to take away as much sound as you want it to depending on the threshold. What I really like about this though is I don't have to go through all these breaths and get rid of them.
The pole We could take it to.
You see this breath right here? I would normally have to go in and cut it out, but not anymore with this smartGate. That's what I'm talking about. Then, after all that, I'm going to add a smart de-esser, once again from Sonable. Before going into any sort of compression or EQ, I want to make sure that my sibilance is under control, along with my plosives. Not every single de-esser in the world will take care of plosives and sibilance, but this one does a really, really good job. And just like before, it will automatically analyze the voice and use AI to help get rid of those extra sibilance and plosive sounds. Check out what this sounds like.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go.
But you can hear those like if and don't has that extra plosive, but with it,
Leave if you don't wanna go.
it's automatically tamed, and that's what I like to see. Super easy to use, super intuitive, and it just fast. Along that same line, we have the Smart EQ by Sonable. Once again, love this company. I found out about it a couple months ago, and I haven't looked back since. Using AI, you can click this button to record your voice, and it will create a specific EQ curve based off of the vocal characteristics that it hears. This is the one it's created for me. I've taken this and I've turned it down ever so slightly, but it just makes it feel a bit more professional using this, and I like to know that AI has got my back. This is a very subtle change. I'm going to do most of my EQing with the next two plugins, but this is a cool thing to add into the mix. Next up, we have one of my favorite EQs of all time, the Pro Q3. The Pro Q3 is great because just like a normal EQ, you can put it down, put it up, use all the different types of curves. You can get really, really granular with the actual slopes themselves. But what the best part about this is it's a dynamic EQ. And what I mean by that is you can extend out these bottoms or tops to additionally take away any sort of signal that you might want to. So this is saying for the normal time, we're going to be taking away -2 decibels. But anytime this signal becomes too much, we're going to be taking away almost 6 decibels.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go.
You can see that dropping down anytime there's a heavy frequency of that part. Let's move on to one of my secret weapons for vocals and professional modern sounding vocals, and it is the emulation of a vintage EQ that has been on numerous records. In this case, I'm using the emulation by Waves called the Pultec EQ P1A, but this is just an emulation of the original Pultec EQ that it's modeled after that looks very much similar. Logic actually has a free stock plugin of this. If you want to use this, go for it. But all that I'm using this EQ for is boosting the high frequencies at 10K. I'm boosting by 4 decibels and I have kind of a broad bandwidth, but check out the before and after of this super high end and the crispiness it adds to this vocal.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go. I've got an aching that you're waiting for.
It's more present, it's more airy, and it's way more modern sounding, especially for this pop genre that I'm going for in this particular song. Works perfectly. Now we're on to compression. After all of that, we're going to compress it. This particular vocal didn't need a lot of compression. You can see the waveform itself. It was really well recorded, and I did a good job of keeping my dynamics in check. Also, with the addition of Melodyne and helping compress it even more, I don't need a lot of compression. I do want to add some compression though to just even make it stick out even more, make sure that all of the words can be heard. My favorite type of compressor for adding onto vocals is a FET type compressor or an 1176. In this case, I'm using the one from Waves called the CLA 76. Here are the settings I use. Fast release, semi-fast attack, 4:1. I have the input set so that I'm getting around -5 to -10 dBs of gain reduction, and that's what I thought sounded good on this track. There is one more plugin I like to add to my lead vocal track specifically, and that's Reverb. Adding Reverb directly to my main vocal will give me more control over my reverb sound than it would be if I used a bus. In this case, I'm using another plugin from Sonable called Smart Reverb. Check it out.
I don't wanna leave if you
Without,
if you don't wanna go.
With.
I've got an aching that you're waiting.
Really subtle, but it helps it put in more of a room. Instead of getting that super dry studio recording that we had before, I just have a really intimate, natural sounding reverb according to this XY, and I have the wet knob pretty low as well so that it gives some feeling to the vocal, but still keeping it pretty dry. This is my main vocal, and I want it to be really upfront in the mix. I don't want a lot of reverb on it. This delay is just a bus, and you can see the signal is very, very small. On this delay that I use, it's the H delay from Waves, which is one of my favorite delays that I've used on countless tracks. I have it ping pong, full wet, I have it bandpass in the middle, and the feedback, I think this is the default feedback. So there you go. Let's check out what this sounds like with all of these plugins on and off.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go. I've got an aching that you're waiting for the lights to turn low.
You can hear it sounds much more professional, much more ready to go. Now that I have my main vocal all ready to go, I'm going to use this and just copy over all of these plugin settings onto my next one. These are my doubles and triples. You'll notice that I've also added some additional reverbs to them to make them sit even farther back in the mix. I've also added more delay and etc, etc. Both bus 10 and 11 are reverbs, bus 12 is my delay. I also want to point out that I only use Melodyne on my lead vocal track. If I sang my doubles and triples pretty much on pitch, Autotune will work plenty fine in the background with those doubles and triples. It will save me a ton of time rather than trying to Melodyne every single track out there. You can, I have done it before, but it's not something I want to do if I'm trying to save some time as a producer. Let me show you what all of three of these sound like together.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go. I've got an aching that you're waiting for the lights to turn low. We could sneak.
It sounds really professional, and those doubles and triples just add another depth of professionalism to the track, in my opinion. I'll rinse and repeat that same process for all of the other parts I recorded. I'll even group the other parts I recorded, such as the high parts, onto a bus so that I can process them even more. And let's add in all of them together and hear what they all sound like after I process them all the same. Check it out.
I don't wanna leave if you don't wanna go. I've got an aching that you're waiting for the lights to turn low. We could sneak around the corner, hide away on the pole. We could take it to the basement if it overflows.
And that's it. There's an overview of that vocal chain if you want to use it for yourself. Play around with it. Add your own flavor. This is a basic vocal chain that has a lot of room for creativity and experimentation. And if you don't want to shell out $1,000+ to get all these plugins that I just featured, I get it. And you don't have to. Remember, you can download those 10 vocal presets that only use stock plugins for free in the description below. Processing vocals is important, but it's not as important as the recording itself, which is why you should go check out this video I made right up here, which will show you how to record professional vocals from your home studio.